Hello Greens, it's Michael O'Neill. I'm your friendly Green Party of New York staff organizer, and this is another live edition of How Greens Get Things Done. On this program, I talk about tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use to help build the Green Party, to be more effective in our participation of social movements, and to run more competitive campaigns. And so this week, I want to talk to you about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is public speaking. Now, as Greens, we want to be spokespeople. We want to talk about our party and talk about the issues that matter to us, talk about the reforms that matter to us. As candidates, certainly, we need to be able to speak and inspire a group of people. A couple weeks ago, I uploaded a video about how Seth Caperdale uses rhetoric very effectively in his speeches, and how, sorry, I was just checking out the live feed here. It looked like things were stopping for a moment, but it seems that we're doing okay on the stream, bandwidth-wise. Seth Caperdale, uses rhetoric very effectively to drive his point home, creating almost a sense of poetry in his speeches that is inspiring to people, and also makes his speeches more memorable, right? You have a better grasp of what he's saying, and you're more likely to be able to carry that forward through his use of repetition and other rhetorical devices. Today we're going to talk more about the voice and how you use your voice as an instrument, as a tool to reach people, to fill a room, to inspire people, motivate people, and most importantly, to be heard, right? Because if people cannot hear you, if they cannot understand you, then there's no way that your message is getting through, if only because it's not reaching the people that you're speaking to. So this is going to refer to public speaking without audio assistance. So without amplification, without a microphone, just it's you in a room and you're trying to get people to hear you. And we're going to go over some basic concepts, and I'm going to point you to some resources you can look at online. Now, before I start, this topic to some people can sound a bit touchy-feely or a bit pretentious, because in order to visualize or to use your imagination to use your voice, it helps to get into some slightly esoteric sounding ideas, but they're not really all that esoteric at all. It's just that you are trying to use your imagination to identify and isolate a physical feeling that you're trying to generate in your body so that then you can be heard. Because when we're speaking, this is a physical process that's going on. It is a matter of a vibration being generated in your chest and in your vocal cords through friction, and then that vibration resonates out from your body and your face and your head through the air, and then that vibration strikes the people who are in your audience, and they feel that vibration through their eardrum, which is translated into sound, and then they hear you. But it's physical vibration and friction the entire way. And when we are trying to optimize how we sound, optimize our voice, it gets down to what you're doing with your body, because that is the source of that vibration, of that percussion, whatever. And this is going to be familiar to you if you've ever had any singing training or anything like that. But for a lot of people, they're not used to thinking of their voice in this way. They're not used to thinking of their body as an instrument for their voice. And often when we hear actors or musicians talking about their body as an instrument, that's usually cast as a very pretentious thing to say. Also, just in general, working on your public speaking means thinking about how you speak and listening to yourself and watching yourself and thinking about how others actually perceive you. And those can be very uncomfortable things to do. They can be very awkward to do. And it's not going to hurt you, but it is awkward. So I encourage you to lean into the awkward. And by doing that, you are going to give yourself a really important tool, an important skill that maybe other people have not dedicated themselves to. They did not bring themselves to lean into the awkward. And it's going to be one more tool in your toolkit to represent your party or your campaign or your candidacy. Now you might be thinking, well, look, I'm good enough, right? Like I'm just gonna be myself, right? I'm just gonna be myself. I'm gonna have a conversation with people. I'm just gonna be me. Look, if you want people to give up their nights and their weekends to your campaign or to your event, if you want people to leave their kids at home with the sitter or a spouse, if you want them to cut a check to your campaign or to your organization, then you need to use every tool at your disposal to reach people, to inspire them to act. You need to use every tool that you have to fulfill the promise of your campaign, to be in service of your issues that you care about. And one of those tools is how you speak to people. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a genius or a naturally gifted musician or speaker in order to do it well. Like so many of the things that we talk about on this live stream, there's maybe, between 3 and 5 kind of basic things that if you can get those down, then it will really raise you above most of the people in the field in terms of your competitive field as a candidate. So it's really worth it. It's totally worth it. And we would like to believe that just us showing up, rolling into a room or an auditorium is enough to get people to act, to get people to change, or to get people to join up. But we're not that cool. You're not that cool. I'm not that cool. We have to be prepared. Our party deserves for us to be prepared and to make use of anything that we can to accomplish our goals. And that actually dovetails into the first thing I want to talk about, which is that if you want your audience to be this excited, then you as the speaker need to be that excited. Here, let me get into frame here. Nope, I'm not in frame at all. Okay, I always forget that I'm cropped. All right, let's see. If you want people to be this excited, then you as the speaker need to communicate this much excitement. So you, generally speaking, you want to try to convey 20% more excitement than you naturally would just in a one-on-one casual conversation. You want to be 20% louder than you think you need to be. And you want to be 20% slower than you think you need to be. So 20% more excited or passionate, 20% slower than you think you need to be, and 20% louder. If you do those things, if you kind of overstretch, right, over what feels natural, then you will be at just enough to fill the room, to fill the space, and for people to really lock on to what you're saying. People need time to catch up to what you're saying, especially if you're talking about policies, if you're talking about facts and figures. And our instinct, especially when we're trying to convey excitement, is to is to speak quick, right? Sometimes just the natural nervous energy will cause us to speak more quickly. Sometimes because we want to seem excited or exciting, we will speak more quickly. But in reality, you're just leaving people behind. They literally cannot understand what you're saying, and they can't be excited about what you're saying if they can't understand what you're saying. And on the issue of loudness, it's almost always better to be a little more louder than you need to be than to not be loud enough. If anyone in the room is asking you to speak up, then you don't need to speak up just a little bit more. You need to speak up a lot more. You need to fill that room with your voice. Now, how do you do that? This gets back to the idea of your voice is a product of your body. It's friction, it's vibration, traveling through the air, reaching people, striking their eardrums. And our voice is something that most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about in terms of how it works. But there's a few things you can do in your imagination or in your visualization that will give you a little bit of a better sense of how to direct your voice and how to project. And it can sound a little funny. If it sounds funny to you, that's great. Laugh all you want, but still use it because it works. All right, first thing you want to do is you want to imagine that your voice is like a beam or an energy cone or whatever you want to imagine, whatever's easiest for you. And you want to imagine it actually projecting out of your body into the room. And you want to imagine that you're actually pushing that energy out. You're not like pushing the words out, but imagine, it's really just in your imagination to start with. Okay, what I'm talking about here is really basic, like super, super, super basic, but it will help. You imagine that in the back of the room that you're speaking at, there's someone standing there with like a target, and you are imagining a beam of light or a rainbow of sound or however you want to imagine it, or the Force, if you want to go, Star Wars, and you are actually pushing out from your body and trying to knock that target over with the energy that you are projecting out. And the reason you're picking or imagining someone in the back of the room is because the back of the room is like, that's your baseline. If the back of the room can hear you, then everything else will be fine. As long as you're not like literally shouting at people, then the people in the front row or the middle rows, they're going to be fine. They're okay. They're used to public speakers having an elevated sense of energy. But if the back of the room can't hear you, then you got a problem. So that's why your target is back there. So how do you go about imagining this beam of energy, projecting out from your chest? And why am I saying your chest as opposed to your mouth, right? Well, this gets into the second thing, which is learning to actually feel vibration in your body, or at least in your chest and in your throat and your mouth. Now, a lot of people who have not had any vocal training in America, especially people who tend to be like intellectual, I'm trying to replicate this. They talk up in their mouth like this. They talk up in their head. So right now I'm talking up in my head and I'm not resonating at all in my chest. So it makes my voice sound higher and more constrained and more strained. And you might even get a little sense of anxiousness listening to me, because as I'm going up and as I'm locked up here in my head, it sounds just panicked or nervous, as opposed to when I'm talking down here, and I'm not like trying to put on a deep voice, I'm resonating in my chest. And so what you want to imagine is that you're trying to relax your shoulders, relax your neck, relax your jaw. And if you actually like place your fingertips on your chest and make a ha sound, you can practice making that like H-U-H. You're making just a ha. And I'm feeling a little self-conscious doing this on video, but and also I'm wondering how it sounds in the microphone that I have on my lapel here. But anyway, you want to try to be using as much of your torso to resonate as possible, because that's going to give you a more robust sounding voice. It's also going to have less strain on your vocal cords if you're using your entire torso along with your throat and your face. And also, it will allow you to be louder without, again, straining your throat. When you're just talking in your throat, in your head, like I'm trying to do right now, number one, it makes your voice sound higher and more nasal. Number two, it's really, it's harder to achieve the volume that you need. And number three, it's actually really strenuous on your vocal cords. And so you're going to, your vocal cords are going to get tired more quickly. And if you are speaking a lot, if you are talking to a lot of different people, or if you're speaking at length, and your vocal cords start shutting down on you, start hurting, that's going to be distracting, or it's going to make you actually not able to carry on much longer for that evening or day. So there's a lot of practical reasons to try to develop your voice as something that you use in your entire body, or at the very least in your torso. For people who are like real performers, they resonate with their entire bodies, from the tips of their toes to the top of their heads, and they can fill an auditorium without amplified sound. You don't need to get to that point. You just need to get to the point where you're filling a room and you are heard at the back, and you're able to say what you need to say in a way that sounds grounded and sounds focused and has some power behind it. Now, to get to that point where you are more relaxed and you are not clamping down on your voice so that it's locked up in your head or your neck, you want to do some exercises, and they're basically just stretches. And because, like almost any other physical activity, you want to be loose and limber and not constrained. When you hear a person and it sounds like their voice is very strained, but at the same time very quiet, it almost sounds like they're swallowing their own voice. They're doing two things, most likely. One, they have a tightness in their neck or in their jaw or their shoulders, or all three. And then the other thing is that they are not breathing deeply, and they're not breathing enough. And this is another thing that we do when we tend to get nervous, is we tend to breathe into the top of our chest, and we tend to breathe more often, and it sounds like we're not getting enough air, which makes the people listening to us anxious. Like we're actually making them feel anxious because we sound anxious. And the reason for that is that our bodies are not getting enough oxygen. So you want to breathe into your belly. And when you tell people to breathe deep, frequently they'll actually just end up breathing more into their chest. They'll kind of puff up their chest. And what you need to do is allow your belly to stick out. So you're breathing into your belly. And that will go a long way towards calming you down and also allowing your audience to feel grounded. I probably should have started with the breath, but that's okay. All right, let's talk about breathing some more. And I probably should have started with breathing, honestly, because if your breathing is relaxed, then a lot of the other things I've talked about will come along a lot more naturally. A good pointer to keep in mind is one thought, one sentence, one breath. So every sentence in your speech should communicate basically one thought. And then you should be able to use one breath to communicate that thought / sentence. That rule of thumb will keep you from doing a number of things that can limit the effectiveness of your speaking. Number one, if you're limiting your sentences to one thought and one breath, then that will keep you from stringing idea after idea together into a run-on sentence that will be difficult for people to follow and will be difficult for you to carry to completion. The second thing is that if you are using one breath per sentence, it will keep you from trailing off at the end of your sentences. Frequently, people will not follow through to the end of their sentences with their breath, which causes your words to trail off, which, number one, people may not be able to hear you, and number two, it can undermine the importance of the end of your sentence. And frequently, it's the end of our sentences that contain the most important content in the sentence. So you want to make sure that you are following through to the end of your sentences. The third thing that this guideline will do is it will make sure that you are not breathing too frequently and making yourself almost hyperventilate. If you are using one thought and one breath to the end of a sentence, then you're not stopping in the middle of a sentence to take unnecessary breaths. And it encourages you to use the breath that you have to finish your sentence as strong as possible. So again, for every idea that you have, one idea that you're trying to express, one sentence that you're using to express it, and one breath that you are using to carry yourself through that sentence. So I've been using the word idea and thought kind of interchangeably. An idea can be very complex. An idea can be single-payer universal health care. But a thought is whatever you are trying to communicate about single-payer universal health care in that instance. So you don't have to understand why all of these things work, and you don't have to get them right exactly. But if you start to practice them, I guarantee that you will see improvement, you will see results. Now, I want to go to the magic window here to show you a little resource you can use to get some more tips from actual experts on this kind of thing. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. As I've mentioned on previous live streams, I'm a theater major. And so while that does not qualify me to calculate the public employee health insurance savings that the New York Health Act would bring to municipalities and counties and cities across the state, it does qualify me to talk about how to use your voice in public speaking and things that you can do to improve how you present yourself when you're speaking live and unamplified. Now, even though I'm not qualified to calculate those healthcare savings, following some of the steps that I talked about a few weeks ago, you saw that I could do it. So if I can do it, you can do it. And I also believe that if I was able to learn some of these tips and practices for how to speak in a grounded way and a loud way but again doesn't feel like you're shouting at people don't feel shouted at, then I think you can learn them too. You don't have to be a naturally gifted vocal artist to get improvements from these practices. So what I've brought up here is a PDF I found a while ago, and it's called Tips and Tools to Vocal Freedom. And it's a distillation of some different practices that I have come across in the theater and voice classes that I took as a young man in undergraduate college, and also gives you some resources for further reading. One of the best books on this topic, in my experience, is The Right to Speak by Patsy Rothenburg. And that's actually name-checked in this PDF. So if you, I'm looking at, The Right to Speak by Patsy Rothenburg, and Freeing the Natural Voice by Kristen Linklater is also considered like one of the primary texts of this field. And so if you're interested in this topic, I really recommend taking a deep dive into some of these books, because number one, we really rely on our voices, whether we're having a one-on-one conversation with someone or whether we are trying to convince a room to sign up for our campaign and give up those nights and weekends to help out with building the Green Party and getting Greens elected. We rely on our voices. And so this is something that I believe deserves at least some investment of your time and your energy. The other thing is, this is going to teach you about yourself. You're going to learn things about yourself, about why you speak in certain ways, about how you carry yourself, about the relationship between your emotions, your voice, and your body. And again, this can sound like really touchy-feely stuff to some people, but there's a lot to be learned here that can enhance a lot of the interactions that you have in your life and in your work as an activist, as a Green, as an organizer. So if you Google tips and tools to vocal freedom, you will find this PDF online, or you can use the search engine of your choice. And you can download it, and these warm-ups are helpful because it helps you do some of the things that we talked about, like relaxing your neck, relaxing your shoulders, opening up your body so that you can breathe in a more grounded way, so that you have more breath to work with as you are communicating one sentence, one thought, one breath. And also it's just stuff that's good for your back, and it's going to help your endurance while you speak. And your articulators are really important to get your consonants out in a crisp and intelligible way. And I really recommend downloading and reading through it. So that is a small overview of some of the, let's say, physical mechanics to public speaking. In the future, we can talk about other aspects of it. And I hope that some of this has made sense. Like I said, some of these concepts can sound relatively esoteric or new agey or touchy-feely, but they do work. And I want Greens to feel confident as they're stepping up to speak in front of a room, because our party needs you to be confident. It needs you to inspire those people. You're going to feel great when you feel confident in your ability to be heard and in your ability to articulate things that you care about, that you feel passionately about. So that is this week's live stream. Please leave your comments. And I have a special announcement to make. We are on YouTube. And so we have a YouTube playlist at gpny.org/video. Again, that's gpny.org/video. I have the first, 11 or 13 episodes of this series up there. We're on the Green Party of New York YouTube page. So if you have wanted to recommend these videos for people to watch, but you've had trouble getting people to watch them on Facebook, we're now on YouTube. Easier to watch, easier to share. On that gpny.org/video page, we have an embedded YouTube playlist all on one page, and we'll continue to build out different features in the archives to make different topics and different tutorials more discoverable, easier to find, easier to share. But we are on YouTube. I want to thank Joy Davis, who left a comment during the stream saying that these are very useful webinars. Thank you so much, Joy. I really appreciate you taking the time to leave that feedback. I hope they are useful to people. I hope they will continue to be useful. And I will see you next week, next 4 p.m. Eastern Time. My name is Michael O'Neill. I'm your friendly Green Party of New York staff organizer. This is How Greens Can Get Things Done, where we talk about tips, tricks, and techniques for building the Green Party, participating in social movements, and running competitive Green Party campaigns. I want you to enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will see you next week. Bye.